All right, mic check, mic check. Morning Masters Podcast, your host, Man of Course. Got a special guest across from me today. Got Miss Natalie, Bryan. How you doing?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
I'm doing good. Initially, when I set out to, I didn't know it was going to be this quick. I hit Miss Karen Gordon literally like at 1 in the morning. I didn't know she was going to respond. I was just up. And I asked her if she knew some people that I can talk to. I specifically said a black woman though,
Okay.
that I can talk to about these particular topics or just genre of topic rather. And the next morning she texted us both in the group chat, and that's why I call Karen. We always call her plug. Most people that I know call her that because she'll connect you with whoever you need to be connected to. But I guess first before we get into anything, tell me a little about yourself and where you're from and.
My name is Natalie Bryan. I am a licensed clinical social worker here in the Augusta area by way of Brooklyn, New York. I have been in the health and human services over 25 years, been a therapist about 10 years, 5 years fully independently in my own practice. I have history working in food stamps and Medicaid and the VA hospital systems. So I have a diverse amount of education about services within specific communities.
I'm glad I normally sometimes I know the guests sometimes or I've been watching them for a long time before I have them on, and obviously this one us being connected, us not knowing, I didn't want to ask too many questions anyway on purpose. So like I'm glad you said it because you just said by way of Brooklyn, New York, and that's where I'm from. So like it's funny I meet people like that, but I don't meet them. Like, I don't know I'm meeting them, right? So like I'm gonna ask you. People ask me all the time, like, "Well, how'd you get here?"
Oh, easy peasy. Military wise, my sister's husband is now retired, but moved here because they got assigned here on Fort Gordon, and I came to be family support. They had 2 littles, and this is kind of the furthest that either one has been away from family. So I know I came for my sister. His parents came for him just to give him some family support for a while, and I stuck around because I liked it.
Okay, that's probably one of the better stories I've heard. Normally, people send their kids down south, or down south is always something else but just to come from military, that's great. I always tell people, at least for me, living in Brooklyn, I never really knew about the military. I seen it on TV, like Dead Presidents and something like that. I don't know if that's a good movie to reference, but that's why I saw it. I never saw nobody in school with us when I came down here. I think on my first day in school for real, they had like JRTC, and they was like super mean, like for no reason. I was lost. I didn't know where I was going, but how militant and mean he was. I was like, what you got going on? But I never seen kids like dressed up like that.
Exactly.
On Chucky, I did see it. It's a Chucky movie where like they dressed up like that, but I never seen it in real life. So it was a good experience, or a different experience rather, coming down here. But so you say you've been in the field. So how'd you get into this field of?
Well, I'm gonna be honest with you. My background, my parents are Jamaican. So my mom, even though we lived in New York and Brooklyn, we traveled back home a lot. So she came up very, very poor. They lived in one room in a tenement yard type situation. So when she was able to, I know since I was young, we just consistently always sent barrels of food and clothing, all the stuff like that, and we'd go down there and we just give it to people. And I think helping people just came from that, and it just transitioned into becoming a social worker. Now, I really wanted to be a therapist, but I didn't know the avenue. And so when I was going to school, I went to school for psychology, and I was like, I really want to do therapy with people. People are always telling me their problems, and I think that would be a great fit for me. And I remember meeting a mentor when I was working in social services in Long Island, and she was like, you can do therapy at a master's level with a social work degree. And I was like, man, I already do social work in the community. Why not? So I switched majors, and that's how I found out about becoming a therapist clinically through social work, and that's where it started.
Just so I don't jump off too far, I know you mentioned being from Brooklyn. So how long did you stay there, and what was it like for you? And what part were you?
Oh, I was born Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
Born and raised in St. Mary's Hospital. I've lived there all my life until actually my last year of high school. I went to Clara Barton in Brooklyn, and we moved. We moved. my senior year, which was devastating. I had the best principal because he came to Long Island and told my mother, let her finish her year, let her figure it out. But, ended up moving to Freeport, Long Island. So from then until I moved here, so about another probably 15 years, we were in Long Island, and then I moved here.
Well, I guess if I'm asking for me, like, what era was it when you were in? I'm not trying to find your age, but what era was it when you was in Brooklyn?
Yeah, definitely the like my whole life, but high school graduation for me was 1996, so I moved to Long Island like 95 into 96.
Okay, so a lot of people, at least for me, I don't know, but a lot of people that's like, I don't know what it'd be for anybody that was growing up around 90s, but for people like me, I look at 90s like a golden era.
It was.
I guess.
It was.
Musically, I mean, just everything. Honestly,
everything.
Like culture.
It was. It was. I remember when Brooklyn Maximas were hype, West Indians, and it was so much fun. I think that kids today, although they have great knowledge and everything, I don't know if they really get a real opportunity to be children because everything is so artificial. How they learn to communicate. Even now, they struggle with social cues because they really have never had a chance to organically gain friends. It's now more of like, hey, we're in this chat room together, we're in this, everything is kind of technically, so they've never really had opportunities to really get rejected or learn how to cope and come back from that. So a lot of times you find people nowadays are struggling with their children, and even adults are struggling a little bit in how they communicate and engage in relationship with other people socially.
Well, I guess that's a good question. Like for in your field, like how do you try to communicate, I guess, parents or even kids to get an alternative route than what's the norm for them now?
I think that's hard because I always feel, and this is my soapbox, not anybody else may not feel like that, but I feel like technology takes so much away. Yes, you can learn, you can communicate, but if you notice with technology, the more we have of it, the more isolative people have become. They're connected, but they're not engaged. There's no intimacy. There's no real kind of getting to know each other. So my thing is, I always tell people like, unplug for a while. Take the kids camping, go on an RV trip, go to the lake, turn off the stuff, because guess what? After a while, they'll kind of unplug. Now, I do know that there are quite a few disorders, like gaming addiction and stuff, that it can get a little hairy when dealing with kids and unplugging, and because that has become their whole life. Right. So that is a real struggle for parents. Actually, I think I was watching TikTok the other day, and this man literally was crying because his teenage son has kind of like a brain disorder now from the gaming so much that he cannot shut off. I forgot what they call it, but I'm gonna look that up. But it was interesting watching. He was just so devastated. He's like, my son was brilliant, he was this, but can't get past this situation with gaming. And people don't realize your brain, when you are doing things that are creative, you are creating new neural pathways. You're really growing and creating these positive neurons that are connecting your brain and being really creative. Not to say you can't do that online, you can, but when you do it organically, just naturally, it's a different type of stimulation. When you're doing things like gaming and so much with the media and social media and stuff, we are getting bombarded by so many pixels behind the screen we don't recognize. And while we are naturally looking at a still screen, behind that still screen is all of the different things that are triggering our neurons. Our brain is activated. So we are overstimulated, and we don't realize that we're overstimulated. So when you tell someone who is living that 20 hours of the day to stop and sit in a room and read a book, their attention span is just not, it's not going to correlate, So it really is having some hard set boundaries on, it's okay to game, but we're going to shut down for a little while and be a little bit more natural and do something out, go to the park. We're going to go to the lake. We're going to take a road trip. we're going to travel. We're going to try and do some things different as opposed to just having media situations only.
I did see something on social media today that kind of said it was, I don't know if it's, I think it said millennials and micromanaging don't match. I don't know. I didn't screenshot it though, but I got what it was saying because I work in management, and for a little while I didn't know exactly what it was, but I knew that younger people that was coming in, they weren't functioning like how. And I'm not even that much older than a lot of them, but they wasn't functioning how people that came in my age was functioning, right? Yeah. So I thought maybe we just got a bad batch this year. Yeah. You know, the next year we got an even worse batch. Yeah. It didn't get no better. That was the first one I thought was bad. I was the best batch. Okay. Right. So, and then now when you have all these younger people coming into work, and like you realize like even something simple they can't do. Yeah. I might tell them like just make sure you stack the bags and nice and neatly, and they leave a mess. It's like they made it worse sometimes. So. And I'm a person. I have grace, so I mean, I understand. Like they were brought up different. Maybe they didn't. Maybe don't need a job. Maybe don't care about it. They just did it to whatever. But I am seeing that. When you say that now, I'm thinking like maybe that's something they're dealing with. Maybe they weren't. Not saying they weren't raised right, but they didn't get the certain kind of attention they need, or they got attention span to do certain things.
Absolutely, and you know, social media doesn't help because I was writing a chapter for this book, and I was talking about in the book how we really don't realize how social media impacts us. And I'm like, these young adults, children, teens, whatever you want to say, they see these social media posts and moments and videos and don't realize that's just a snippet. And it might have took 20 hours for that snippet. You know, I saw this woman post around Christmas time, and I appreciated her, and I made a comment. She was trying to do a family Christmas post of pictures, and then like a little short video, like 3 minutes. It literally took them 20 hours. Yeah. 20 hours and a limited amount of takes and all that stuff. And I said it was for a 4-minute video and maybe 20 pictures to get her, the kids, the husband, and everybody together to take this picture. And I said, if these children knew how much it took to put in to create this look of what perfection is, or the lifestyle I want to live, or the substance, the content, the work ethic that goes into behind all of that, because you have to be dedicated, you have to be consistent, you have to definitely be a hard worker to accomplish that. You have to have some organization, you have to be able to coordinate different things, so it takes skill set to put all of that stuff together. Luckily, we have some great kids that can kind of be like, okay, I could do that, boom, 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 and it may work for them, but others can't. And then these falsities as what reality is versus what reality is not is perpetuated. And then we have a mess on our hands because we're like, okay, I want to live like, but I want to put in as much work as Heathcliff the cat. If people even know who Heathcliff the cat is. I don't know. What is that? See, he was a cartoon cat that was super lazy and he really didn't do anything. And he was
what show was it on?
It's called Heathcliff. Oh. You can check it out.
I know Heathcliff Hustle. That's the only one I knew.
No, Heathcliff the cat. So, you know, a lot of people don't even know who Heathcliff the cat is. But yeah, he was just a cat, a cartoon cat who was super lazy. He wanted you to feed him all the time. He didn't want to do anything life was about, easy peasy. And I think people think that is life. And I'm not saying that can't be life in balance. But what I'm saying is it takes effort. Right. You know, life is not and especially nowadays, if you turn around, I mean, honestly, a month, 2 months, like literally 2 years just passed us in COVID. Half the time you don't even recognize. You're like, what year are we in again? What month are we in? Everything is moving so fast. So by the time they turn around to say, okay, I'm going to learn something, they're technically an adult. And now they're having to figure out life as an adult when they didn't kind of learn how to be children and enjoy that aspect and really start to learn about the different nuances of the world.
I agree. I actually I do a thing called Think Out Loud where I just talk. It's just me personally, me myself, and I spoke about that because I posted something kind of similar to that. I was saying that a lot of times people see the finished product and they don't know what goes into the job. So like, I'll just take podcasting for example. You'll see somebody want to start one up, but they don't know even what you need. They think they can buy a microphone and use whatever, and then you can do that. Don't get me wrong, but it's a lot that go into it. Certain questions you got to be able to have dialogue. Like you might can't hold a full conversation in general. So how would you do a podcast? It don't work, you know. So but they don't know what go into it. They just see that okay, this person getting this, or that looks good, or that is done. So when you see it, it looks easy because it's finished, you know. But yeah, it take. Like I think last night I was up 3 in the morning, 2 in the morning maybe, editing the video, which I was done, but I just was trying to put a lot of finishing touches on it. And the guy was like, yeah, you did a real turnaround. I want to start doing that. I'm like, yeah, but I've been doing it for a long time, so it's easier for me to just do this and do that, as opposed to somebody just thinking, okay, he recorded Thursday, put it out Friday. I must can do it too. It don't work that way. It
doesn't work that way. And sometimes, you know what, trial and error, you can learn it, but it would be better to be a little bit more seasoned in things. But I think this is an era of just trial and error. It's like, okay, crash and burn a million times. Instead of saying, okay, show me how you did it, that I can be a little bit more proficient at it.
That all goes to what you said about dedication. That's the main thing. If you got dedication, then that's fine. But a lot of people don't have dedication. They just see a product and they're like, oh, I want to do that too. Because they look good doing that. So I think they just take you out and put themselves in that place and like, oh, I can do that.
Yes.
Without even knowing what their strengths and weaknesses is on that. But I'm with you. I don't turn anybody down. I tell anybody they can do anything they want to do. As long as you're going to be dedicated to it, then that's fine.
That's it.
That's just my personal opinion though. But you did bring up, you know, let's talk about the millennials and stuff like that. So for far as your field in the therapy field, like what all types of emotions, I guess, or issues do you deal with?
Always anxiety. They're always anxious about, you know, and I mean, it's not just them. Honestly, since COVID, mental health has been, I mean, through the roof. Most of the mental health clinicians that I know have waiting lists because it has just, people have been feeling overwhelmed, anxious about the unknown, struggling with what's going to happen next. And if it happened next, what's the next step? So what I find is more people are dealing with anxiety, and anxiety is really a disorder about feeling out of control. And so it's really just talking to them about restructuring, maybe creating themselves a schedule or routine that's familiar to help them to feel like they've gained some control back over a situation, depending on the circumstance. Sometimes if your anxiety isn't addressed early enough, they can graduate into depression. And so depression can be situational, like it could be a grief thing, it could be something really short term, or it can be something that's prolonged. It really is determined on how long the situation is going on, where you're feeling out of sorts, and it impacts your activities of daily living. Like you're not getting up and getting showered and getting dressed. You're not engaging with your friends. You're not going to work. You're not socializing or talking to family. So those are some things that can identify some depression. But then it's the length of time that you've been feeling that way, how worse the symptoms are getting, stuff like that.
You mentioned anxiety and, you know, having a schedule and pattern and things of that nature, some sense of normalcy, I guess. How much of that do you, when you doing your study, or, you know, you searching somebody, and it could be, like you said, it could be part Heathcliff, or it could be anxiety. How do you determine which one is which? Because what if it's not anxiety and it's just kind of lazy?
Well, usually with anxiety, it's not more so laziness. Anxiety is more so always in this state of hypervigilance, like feeling like, oh my gosh, something's going to happen. Or that may lead all the way up to having panic attacks where they feel like they're having chest pains and stuff like that. So it really is just being in this state of, oh my gosh, I don't know when the other shoe is going to drop. And so it's just helping to work them down and to calm them, because while they're going through that, cortisol levels are just flowing in their body, and it just continues to hit all of their muscles and their tissue, and that can lead to things like heart disease, because, that's when they say stress kills, heart disease and cardiovascular issues. So we try to help to minimize all of that and be in a calmer headspace to reduce the cortisol so it's not affecting the body physically, because that's what happened when we have mental health issues. People don't recognize that it shows up in your body physically. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times you're anxious and you don't know how to express that. You'll start getting headaches and tummy aches, and your body will start aching. Depression, you'll have muscle ache all over in your back, everywhere in your chest, and you're just feeling out of sorts, not realizing that you're really struggling with a mental health issue and just not sure how to express that, and your body starts to reflect it.
And I'm glad you said it, because that's something I actually had in my notes. Is like, I guess in your field, it's easy. It's probably not easier, but you kind of specialize in kind of bringing it out of somebody, right? I think sometimes, like you said, you can be your body will hurt, or you might feel something. Your body will change. You'll feel it, but you might know you're dealing with something because you kind of block it out. Whether it be an issue you had just growing up, or whatever, it could be something triggered. I don't know. Maybe you don't like your dad or something, but you seen him he might have visited or something like that, and now it's like you thinking about it, but you don't know you thinking about it because you kind of blocked it out. Or dealing with depression, or a death of a loved one that you didn't really cope with yet. So it's a lot of things that I guess that you can put behind you, but not, or you can kind of mask it, but you don't know that you have to address it. Like how do you I guess try to bring people to come address those situations?
Well, I always tell people, your healing is up to you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to be when you hit that enough is enough, or when you're facing some issue that if you don't address it, it impacts your daily life, like maybe work or home is causing issue with your husband or spouse or the kids or whatever. That's when usually people want to come in. But healing really is individual, and it depends on what they want to do. A lot of times people get stuck not wanting to be vulnerable and show those parts of themselves to anyone. Sometimes they feel safe to do it with the therapist because they're like, hey, by law, they can't tell anybody in aspects.
Not even cut you, but I think, and I know people that are watching this, my core audience probably don't watch this show. I don't know if you ever have, but like, I think a big representation of that would be Sopranos, because obviously you just big macho guy, you can't express your feelings, but at the same time, he knows that by law, it's things she just can't do, so I can go vent and go out, you know. And I wanted to cut it there just to, cause I know we'll bring it back in full circle anyway, but like, how you being a black female or woman, I don't know the word to use no more. Okay, I don't know, I'm getting ready to curse me out. But opposite gender and being black, right?
Yes.
So how do you, like, I guess, preach to people to go check on their mental health? Because in our community, it looks as if, like, when you go to get help, something wrong with you. Yeah. Or when you go to a therapist, something wrong with you.
Yeah. That is a historical thing, you know, with us as a culture, because if we show a weakness, we're not valuable. And if you want, Dr. Joy DeGraw wrote a book on post-traumatic slave syndrome. A lot of that stuff stems from that, because if you showed weakness in a situation around mass, you'd be killed, your family would be sold, you know, things like that. So I think we've always had a perpetuation of hiding weakness and not showing that, because then that makes us easy to pick off, to send away, to destroy. So, and if you think about it, back in the day, a lot of people had mentally ill family members, but you never saw them because they locked them away in a house, in an institution. You know, they took care of them, but you never saw them, you know? So, I think that's something that is just consistently perpetuated, because people don't realize that trauma and what we learn is cellular. So our mental illnesses, our trauma, the things that we've learned is cellular. So even things that weren't verbalized, even things that weren't expressed are carried out throughout generations. And so a lot of times our behaviors, our characteristics, those things are things that we may have learned innately and just perpetuate because that's what we know to do. And sadly, mental health is one of those things that it's like, okay, something's wrong with you, you're broken, and there's no way to fix it. But just like you go to the doctor for diabetes, you go to see a therapist, a psychiatrist, or psychologist for mental health. If you need medication management is there to help you to feel better, but I think a lot of times people think, oh, there's no way to fix your head or fix your mind, or people always confuse mental health with mental illness. Just because you're working on your mental health doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be mentally ill.
Got you.
You know what I mean? And a lot of times people get those two things just convoluted instead of recognizing that while I'm
What's that word you use?
Convoluted,
I'm going to use that from now on.
Yeah.
I'm big on using misconstrue. I got to start using that word because I say it a lot now. I'm starting to say it too much.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of times people just kind of think it's one and the same, and it's not. And so just continuing to perpetuate like, hey, if you're not feeling well, if you feel like you need help, speak to somebody. Just recognize that people are out here that look like you, that are in the capacity to be of assistance if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stressed. And there are other bigger mood disorders besides anxiety and depression that we as people of color deal with, that we may even name something different because they think, oh, that's just so-and-so, and that's just how they are, when they really could have a mental health issue that could be being addressed, but they're shaming it.
Right.
And there shouldn't be shame in it.
I was going to ask, now I'm trying to ask it before because it's not part of what I wanted to ask, but I know it's a big push. Probably the last 2-3 years, I want to say, maybe just before COVID happened, and it was a big push with mental health. But I was talking to my other day, and I was like, how some people are pushing it because they care, but then some people are using it.
Absolutely. I'm not gonna lie. I think mental health is becoming more mainstream because a lot more people that are in more populist positions have been recognizing, like, hey, something's going on, I need some help. And they have been coming out to say, hey, I need help. I went and got some help. It's really helped me. It can help you. And I think they also did that because they recognized that a lot of people find shame in it and wanted to show them that there's no shame. Do people use mental health as a crutch? Absolutely. Just like they use other things as a crutch. I'm diabetic. I have heart issues. I can't get up to walk down the street. I have, you know what I'm saying? Is it appropriate? Absolutely not. But it's an individual thing. I think that as long as people are out there getting the help that they need, that's the most important thing. So what I do is I do things like this. I go on podcasts when people call me and I talk about mental health. I try to tell them how to access it. I try to tell them, like, hey, it's not some big scary couch in the room, like, lay down, let me pick your brain. It really is just a conversation. You're talking to me. For me, I don't say all these huge words and make people feel like they're this small. We have a conversation. You tell me how you're feeling. And as you're talking to me, I'm thinking of modalities that may work for you.
That's another big word.
Yeah.
Though. What's that? What does that mean?
Modalities is the different type of therapies.
I gotta write this down.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of the different modalities that may work for you. If it's something short, like solution focused, if it's cognitive behavioral therapy, if it's internal IFS, internal family systems, and just see which things work for you. And sometimes it may not even be a modality. It may just be hearing you say your thoughts out loud. Because a lot of times people think what they think in their head sounds great while it's in their head, but when they verbalize it, they're like, ooh, that didn't even, it sounded good in my head, but just did not even, that wasn't good.
I asked that question because I actually, like, when I wanted to do this, I try to do it every year. In the past, most times somebody catch me before I start the search.
Okay.
And so I just get whatever. I'm like, if you do that, I'm gonna, I want to do it. I try to do too many because I ain't pushing nothing.
Yes.
I wanted to push Augusta and what I want to push, but so. You mentioned IFS. You said internal family system, right? So, and you also mentioned people thinking like, well, this how this person is, how that is, right? So I want to give you an example, and you just, okay. So you got a mother and a daughter, right?
Gotcha.
Okay. They black.
Okay.
I throw that in. That's important.
Okay.
Okay. Let's say, because I might feel like, okay, the daughter may have some disdain towards the mom. The mom may or may not know. I'm not sure because the dynamic is, you might see people hang around each other or talking, but the way that other person's talk to you is like you could tell something's there. Yeah. And obviously, I feel like with anybody, I never pick at something. I'm never gonna make you go against your family or like. But I would say like, you got something going on with your mom or your dad, whatever. Cause you can feel it and how they talking. And so I was like, well, you might need to think about getting therapy. Yeah. And I wasn't saying it to say like something was wrong, but I'm like, it wasn't that I needed. I feel like this person needed therapy for them, but I'm like, you could take your mom with you. For the relationship. And sometimes it's just like you have somebody. Let's say somebody like you in the room, a therapist in the room. The way it'll get translated, it'll be different. And then, as opposed to them sitting down talking and somebody saying, "Look, I like you did this when I was younger. You did this when I was younger. I hated it." Da, 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 and then y'all going back and forth, and you're not getting a resolution. But then you have somebody in the room y'all can speak to, and they can help translate these thoughts and these emotions, the way they're coming from. Y'all can get some kind of form of understanding. Absolutely. And I feel like that's important.
It is. A lot of times, people. How do I say this? In relationships that are close and intimate, a lot of times therapists do find themselves as the mediator. Yeah. That is the role that they do play, especially in relationships, definitely between mother and daughter, spouses. There have been issues because a lot of times, because we hear that person all the time, every day, after a while, their stuff turns into Charlie Brown, and it sounds like wah, 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 wah. So although they're speaking, although you can hear them, you're not processing them because you've already blocked them out mentally. So think about a mom who just had a baby. Or maybe had a baby for a little while. That baby will be screaming and crying, and the mom is just walking around the house kind of doing their thing because she's learned a tolerance to know, okay, that's not an emergency cry. That's not important. She's learned, okay, she's gotten the air for her child. And a lot of times can block out. And that's what we do after a while in relationships. We take advantage of the people that we have around us, and then we start to disregard their thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And then we have these poor relationship communications that now we're stuck in a bad place when we don't have to be.
So I feel the same way, and I feel like sometimes you talk to people and you tell them that sometimes they're so combative because I think deep down like nobody want to feel like something is wrong. Or they want to feel like it's normal. And I feel like it could be normal, but it still can be addressed.
Absolutely. But, therapy is not for people who are only mentally ill. Therapy are for people who just need... As therapists, we have to see therapists. You know what I'm saying? I can't help you if I'm taking on everybody's stuff and not realizing that is secondary trauma. That is something that doesn't sit within me physically. So I have to pour that out into my own therapist and talk to him about my feelings, my processes, and what's been going on with me. But I think a lot of times people think that therapy is for like these big, crazy... No, you're feeling a little overwhelmed at work and you notice that is impacting how you speak to your husband and children at home. I need some place to put that. But I want to put that someplace where I'm going to get constructive feedback and it's held, that I know that it's right here. And so that's important, to recognize what you need and recognize you. Because I think a lot of times people have a hard time with identifying feelings and emotions because they don't have the vocabulary. They stick to the big 305, happy, glad, sad, mad. You know what I'm saying? But what about embarrassment? What about broken? What about injured? What about just feeling jealous? What about feeling burdensome? What about all those things that people feel but don't recognize the vocabulary, and then they lash out in anger or pull back in resentment and not communicate those things?
I think too, sometimes people they get therapy blended in with it. You could do a lot of things that's therapeutic as well. You know, it's not necessarily seeing a therapist, but you could be doing something that's therapeutic. Absolutely. And it's just the same thing. Because when you talk to somebody, say you got a problem with, I don't know, your boyfriend, your husband, whatever, and y'all talk something out, sometimes you'll feel better because y'all got it out. Yeah, but that was a therapeutic conversation y'all had. Absolutely. You know, and it's no different than you just going to somebody professionally that actually does this and specializes in this form of communication. Absolutely.
And therapy doesn't always have to be, let's sit down and talk. I know therapists who take their couples outside and run because that's their thing. I've known therapists who do knitting because that's their thing. I know therapists who do art. I know play therapists who play with children and play in the sand and create things that help them to process, because play is a child's first language. So it just depends on, that's why therapy is so great, because it's individual. I can't say what's going to work for you is going to work for you. So I have to sit down, I have to speak to you, and I have to get an understanding of who you are and what may work. And that's what I do.
I want to get back to something you said earlier. You said that you was in the field for a long time, but then you went to private practicing. So what is that like for you? Like,
so
is
it
your own thing?
Private practice is my own practice where I see individuals, couples, and I can do groups. I do like working with families, because usually couple issues more than likely have things to do with the children and vice versa. So I love working with families. But, you know, coming to see me individually is a good thing. I think that people overall need to speak to someone they feel safe with. I will say this, though. Therapists are like shoes. If they don't fit, find another pair. I think people think that because you're on the list, or because I say I'm a therapist, because I'm black, because, no, seriously, I think that people tend to want to come to you for circumstances. But I tell people, feel out the therapist. Feel like if you're going to get what you need from the circumstance. I do tell them to give therapists at least 3 to 4 sessions, because sometimes it's just building that rapport. So it's really finding out, do they have what I need? Is this going to be a good fit for me? And then once you figure out if it's going to be a good fit for you, move from there. But if it's not a good fit, you're the consumer. Find a different therapist, but don't get stuck on that first therapist not working out and then you don't go back.
Got you. That makes sense. Make a lot of sense. But what led you to start your own private versus what you were doing before?
I wanted to practice in a space that I felt created a safe practice environment. You know, everyone has their own definition of what a safe space is. And for me, I wanted to be the creator of that space. And so that was one of my reasons for, you know, launching out on my own. It's different. Absolutely. It's not a huge agency, but I like the intimacy of my space, and I'm good with that.
So when you work for, it's not private, do you still get to pick the people that you...
No.
They just kind of come to you?
Yeah, they're kind of assigned to you. You kind of get a variety of different types of people you want to work with and things of that nature. So I like, not to say you don't get those requests, but you can say, okay, is this a good fit, in my opinion, for me to work with? Or in my specialties, okay. and move from there.
So I guess what's been one of the greater things in the last 5 years versus the years before that?
I think for me, it has just been in charge of my own time, but it also has given me liberty to do more things in the community that I want, like podcasts and panels, and being able to go to schools and having conversations with people about mental health, and also trying out new different modalities, being able to go to different conferences and educational forums to learn how to better hone my skills as a therapist.
Well, that's good. I think it's always good when somebody is in a professional field still trying to get better. Like I always champion that, because you can always get better no matter what you're doing. Like even when you think you know it all, you don't know enough. So,
not at all.
But a couple years ago I did a counsel. I want to say she was a counselor, so I'm assuming she wasn't a therapist. Is there differences in that, like just being a counselor versus a therapist versus?
There's such a conundrum about that. I mean, I would be considered a counselor, a therapist. I think it's just a play on words in some circumstances. However, I know that if you're clinically licensed, then I can clinically diagnose you with a mental illness.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know. Some counselors have that ability if they're a licensed professional counselor, or I think they now have licensed mental health counselors. But some counselors are just like a school counselor who's not really doing diagnosing, but they're still counseling and educating, a career counselor, things like that. So still advising, but maybe not moving to the capacity of diagnosing.
Yeah. So what would you say about, because when I was in college, we took a course, psychology, a psychology class. It was an intro, like it wasn't nothing major, but from that, like people would come in and say, yeah, well, my mom got this, or my dad got that, like because you're reading for stuff and you see these little characteristics.
It's like Googling medical conditions, like you got a cough and I'm like, I got a cough, but my back hurt and I think I'm dying. I tell people don't diagnose, because self-diagnosing it's terrible. It has you going in 50. If you Google 5 symptoms, you could have 10,000 diseases. You know what I'm saying? So I tell people, go to a professional, talk to them, let them do the assessment, let them figure out what's going on with you, and let them diagnose. If you don't agree with the diagnosis, I would say, okay, you can go out and get a second opinion. But I think to be thoroughly assessed and diagnose is the correct way to do things.
So when you're dealing with a client who is, I guess, dealing with grief of death or something like that, right? What are some, if any, some exercises or things you trying to get them to do to try to overcome that?
Well, grief
or
is
address
not.
it.
Yeah, grief is not something that we tell people to overcome, because it's individual, and honestly, anything can trigger grief. You know what I'm saying? If that person means enough to you, it could be a smell of bacon if grandma cooked that bacon the way that you like it. It could be the touch of a blanket if that was your favorite blankie that grandpa gave you. You know what I'm saying? So with grief, it's more of honoring your feelings, honoring the person that passed, doing things in remembrance of them, and walking through the processes of how you're feeling that day, and giving yourself the grace to be able to feel that way and not feel bad about that.
That makes sense. I wanted to ask, like, because of COVID, I don't know if y'all been in that field or nothing like that, but in retail, which is what I'm in, it's been a big shift, a big change, because obviously the money we were making years before is like triple now.
Yeah.
It's triple, but the talent level of people coming to work is not triple.
Yes.
Probably did the opposite, right?
Yeah.
So I wondered if, not saying you or you had to do it, but what do you think about the idea of retail companies kind of having a counselor come in there? Because what I'm seeing lately, like where I work at, is you see people actually really breaking down in work, because you hear 40 hours, but with how the world is going now, it's almost impossible to get the stuff you got to get done in 40 hours.
In 40, yeah. I mean, honestly, with the Great Resignation and other things that are hitting our economic community, a lot of people are having a lot more issues coping. I have seen bigger companies. I know, I think Delta and some other companies, they have brought in wellness therapists on staff. Some people even bring in, if, for example, EAP is an employee assistant program. If you work for a company, most companies have an EAP program. They have therapists there. So if people need those resources, they can call them up and they get sessions for free.
Yeah,
So,
I do see that. Yeah.
so sometimes with those EAP companies, I know I have done it for a few companies where I would do a tele-counseling session on things like reducing work stress or disrupting negative thoughts or learning more about relaxation techniques and things like that. So I think companies are becoming more aware that if their team isn't healthy, happy, and whole, that the production is not going to go forward. And people are dealing with a lot more things than what they were dealing in times past since COVID.
Now, I'm asking this question just as a personal opinion. It's
Okay.
not like it's law, but
Okay.
I'm asking because you specialize in this, right? I'm asking how many, because I think more than one is needed, right? But how many days would you think, if you, I don't know if it's regular job, retail, whatever, would be adequate or, enough to get paid for mental health days you think you would need in a year?
Well,
if you're full-time.
Well, honestly, I think that a person should get regular mental health days. Now, it depends on your company, but I would say people should minimally get one mental health day a quarter. Minimally.
I like that. That's a start. I mean,
Yeah, it's
better
a
than
start.
zero.
I think minimally that would be something that's fair that I could see companies doing. I work with a company right now. They give 3 mental health days a year.
I'm on a job.
On the job. So you just get to take those days and enjoy those days how you see fit for the year. And I think people should take mental health days regularly. Like, I mean, some days, if you're not into it, when you get to work, you're going to be on the clock, not being productive anyway. So why not give the person the time to get themselves together to be able to come in and do what they need to do?
Right. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I always wondered that, and now I want to have that kind of dialogue with somebody who is in that field.
Yeah,
So
I think people need,
because most people that work there, they're going to say a big number. But I do think, I think you should get quarter or monthly, something like that.
I think you should get them, and I think people will appreciate that. Like, man, I get to get a mental health day. I'm planning it for this. I got it, and they'll feel so much better. Like, okay, my job values me enough to know that not every day is going to be a great day.
Right.
And so,
You mentioned doing private practice and wanting to get into the community. And I know before we came in, we talked about the Chamber of Commerce. So if you don't mind, we could talk about that a little bit and how you got involved with that.
Yeah, you know what? I got involved with the Chamber a few years ago because I enjoyed what they were doing in the community. It is the Greater Augusta Black Chamber of Commerce. And I just like that they wanted to see Black businesses and individuals in the community succeed. And they were grassroots and they weren't big. So you can go in and ask questions and learn business and things that you may not have been privy to at no cost, and I mean, having the city come in, professionals, bankers, people from the Small Business Association, like you were getting so many different tools and nuggets that to me made it worthwhile. Because while I do want to do this as a therapist, business wasn't my major. So to learn business, I felt in a proper way as opposed to how our society has it structured. Those are things we're not taught as entrepreneurs right out the gate if we didn't have a mentor or someone who knew. So to have those things and have access to be able to ask questions and get some mentorship and leadership within our community, and also network with other people who are trying to build business and brand. So I really appreciated the effort of the group. So I didn't hesitate to join because I believed in what they were trying to do.
And what's the process of like joining a group like that? Like, is it a certain requirements you got to meet, or is it open enrollment all the time?
It's
like,
open enrollment all the time. You just go to mygabc.com. That's right. .org, mygabc.org. And you just go on and you log in, and they have options on how you want to pay for membership. They'll tell you what's in the membership. If you open a building or have a grand opening, they'll come and do a ribbon cutting for you. And, there are just so many little perks. I tell people to go in, research it, and see if it's a good fit, but it is a resource that's in the community locally. And I say, why not take advantage of it if it's a benefit to you and your business? If you feel you need that, I say go for it. I
always ask this question to most people. I'm going to try to do collage at some point. But I know you being from Brooklyn, of course. But what does Augusta mean to you? With you being here for the time you've been here?
For me, Augusta means for me a restart. Because when I came to Augusta, I had just divorced, and I was looking for a fresh start. And when I came here, this year would be 7 years now. When I came here, I didn't think life would be this. And when I say this is like I have done some amazing things here in Augusta that I didn't think I would ever think about. Like I've been on TV, I've spoken for the mayor, I've done so many crazy things that I never thought I would. I'm like, man, you know, I had my pastor one day say to me, my pastor is kind of good friends with the mayor. And I remember going to see my sister at the hospital. She was having something done and we were there visiting. My pastor said, Natalie, he said, daughter. I said, huh? He said, guess what? I was in the mayor's office and I heard your name. Me in the mayor's office? I thought, why would they be talking about me? You know, so I was like, you know, to have that kind of access and to be able to be on the news and start businesses and do real estate. Like I've done so many great things since I've been here that I've been super excited about the opportunities here in Augusta. So it means really a restart and a refresh for me. You know, I'm actually opening a shared office space for other small businesses to be able to come and have a place to start and do work if they don't have that environment at home or where they are that's conducive to help build their own business, or just need space to meet and have a conversation with other professionals that, you know, could be assistive to them.
How much of your success down here do you accredit to kind of being from a big city? And I ask that because a lot of times people that's from here, I don't know if you're from here. I'm not saying you. Okay. But sometimes people that's from here, they have like this small mindset because it's all they know. So to them, it look bland. Like, I can't do nothing here. It's just Augusta.
Yeah.
But for somebody who's from Brooklyn, from somewhere, from California, from Miami, from Dallas, whatever, you from these big cities, you realize there's a lot of opportunity here. They just don't see it.
It is. Actually, that was my Achilles heel being here. Like every single building I saw, I wanted to have it. Like every single building. Like I promise you, I was driving around like calling my family. You will not believe how many people have moved to Augusta because of me. And my sisters are so, like, everybody's so mad at me. So many people have moved here because of me, because I was like, what are you doing? Like, you don't got 5,000. Like, you don't got 10,000. I need you to come here and I need you to get a house. I need you to have something that is yours. And I mean, I have like pushed so many people. I have friends from Texas who have come here and purchased. I have friends from New York, Chicago, you name it. I have called every person I know and I said, if y'all don't come down here and buy yourselves a house before this thing get crazy. You know, my mother, she's from New York, from Jamaica. Like even my dad, he lives in Jamaica. He came and bought a house. You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, for me, it was just seeing how the real estate was so great to get into when I first got here. My dad is a builder by trade, and my mother, ever since I was a little girl, bought and sold real estate. So when I got here, I was just like, oh my God, like, why are these people not doing this? Like, what is going on? You know, and I didn't get it. But after being here for a while, their mindset and values are different than mine were.
Right.
And I understood that. And I said, you know, for people who would hear me and I said, hey, you know, I think this is a good thing. Why don't you try it? And they jumped on. They're like, oh man, this was the best thing I ever did. Even my mom, she just moved here in August. She was like, Natalie, had I moved when you told me to move, I could have owned like 10 of these houses. But, you know, so to me, Augusta was just a restart, and it was a great one for me.
You know, the crazy thing is that I asked that question a lot. You might have gave the best answer, and like, you're not even from here. It's just crazy. People that live here, they, not saying they have bad answers, but it just feel like they're not ready for it, I don't think. Yeah. Or they can't really truly answer the question because maybe they never thought about what Augusta means to them.
Augusta means to them. So for me, that was, I mean, it was a big deal for me. When I first got here, I was like, I don't think I could do this. But
could you drive when you first got here? You know how to drive?
Yeah. I just was like, I didn't know. I lived on my GPS though for like, even though I had lived here like 3 years, it still played because I was still nervous about getting places. But yeah, for me, that's what it was. Definitely is. It was a great move for me. So I enjoy it.
I know we talked a lot about just mental health and therapy, but we didn't kind of touch on like how can, if somebody wanted to meet you or get with you, like how do they get with you? Do you take insurance? All these kind of questions.
I take insurance. I take EAP. I do cash. I also do slide and scale. Now, a lot of people don't know there are websites you can go to, like Open Path, that I'm assigned with, that helps you to get therapy at a little bit of a cheaper price. So I do open like 3 or 4 slots on my calendar for people on Open Path. I do offer slide and scale fee for people out of pocket. I try to open up a lot more in my calendar. Right now, my calendar is open, which usually is not happening, but I just came back from New York from a contract, so I emptied it. So I'm rebuilding back up, but it's moving pretty fast. I get calls at least 20 times a day, but currently there's still some openings. So yeah, you can find me on my website at www.restoringharmonycounseling.com. My number for my office is 762-585-4610. And that's just it.
Well, was there anything that you wanted to talk about that I didn't talk about?
No, I think we did like a whole gambit of different things, which I love. I like talking about mental health. I just want people to recognize that mental health is a part of your whole health. It's not, I'm sick here, I'm sick there. When you look up the definition of health by the World Health Organization, it says health in the aspect of both physical and mental, for you to be healthy, wholly healthy. So I don't want people to think like, I'm mentally ill. You're not. You're just working on your whole health, just a different aspect of it.
No, I like that, and I think like normally, I always try to do an hour, right? But sometimes it go over, and I'm not saying if it go over is bad, because sometimes it's good to go over, but sometimes people be long-winded because they can't really get their words together, so they'll say like extra words, and they give you extra part of stories, and you just was like you knew everything. I guess you just you speak naturally, so like a lot of questions I had, I didn't have to answer because you said it in your own answer sometimes. So
thank you.
That's very rare though. So
thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. This has been a great evening, and if you want me to come back, I will. My manager will be here, but
definitely.
If you want me to come back, I will. If there's specific topics in mental health that you want to talk about, and I like just having a conversation, because I think when people see that I'm talking like this, or when we sit down and talk, it normalizes what it is. I think when you see me standing up and doing a presentation or paneling, it may not normalize it as much. So I like for it to be a normalized thing.
This type feels more organic.
Yeah.
And then obviously people like podcasts and like watching it now, so it's more popularized. But like you said, if I needed you come back. If you have something you wanted to do and you wanted to film, that you want to broadcast a certain way, you could let me know too. And I got you.
Absolutely. I will say I am having an event at the end of the month along with Payne College, and it is my nonprofit is called Pearl, providing education and advocacy to rebuild lives. This month is Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Yeah, I know.
And we are doing our APB, which is abuse, abduction, and assault. We're educating on how to prevent those things from happening. So we will have someone teaching some basic self-defense. We will be talking about trafficking, consent, assault, and abuse.
Well, if you want, I don't know if you get the personnel or whoever going to be a part of that, we could set up a date to kind of do something to promote that as well too.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk with somebody about that, but it's hard to post. Hey, who's been assaulted? I don't know how to post them. Like, who want to talk about sexual assault? Like, you can't really post it.
Absolutely.
So I was
we have some great speakers. So if you want to pop in, you're welcome to film for the podcast, to ask some of the panelists questions.
Definitely.
We could definitely do that. Absolutely.
All right, man. Well, this was dope.
Thank you.
I appreciate you for dropping by on short notice. We just spoke like 2 days ago.
Yes.
So I'm glad it happened, and it happened perfect, and it ain't long-winded. So I know people going to watch it. They going to love it. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. More Masters Podcast. We out.